I'm not sure how to see these people. And she said that, it's just so sad. She's just like, you have to love them. Even when they wrong you, there's a veil, there's a difference, don't take it personally and do not hold it against them. Not for yourself, not for, my mind went into justice and fairness and where's the equality and where's the, synchronicity, and there's too much war and pain here. Like, you don't understand. It's a painful place to be. And she's like, back up, come back. We started breathing again. It was really weird because then I started like feeling my legs and I was like, oh,
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on the next episode of Let Thy Single Eye Be Still. My name is Travis Cosentino, and today my next guest is Brandi Thomas. She experienced a profound near-death experience, and this is her story. Hi, Brandi. How you doing today?
I'm pretty good, Travis. It's good
Pretty
to hear
good.
from you.
Yeah, you too. It's been a while. Before we kind of get into the NDE, when did that near-death experience happen in your life?
This one was 2018. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So it was around the time I knew you.
I have told 2 people about it.
Shocking.
I'm sorry. It took me so long to open.
Oh my God, that's crazy. I mean, okay, all right. This is already getting interesting. So, okay. All right. So before your NDE, I usually like to kind of get people to kind of know you on a personal level and like, what was your sort of spiritual religious outlook before this near-death experience?
I wasn't raised around religion or God or anything. It wasn't talked about. I had friends that went to church and I was allowed to participate, and I had a dabbling in Christianity. And when, as an adult, a birthing mother, I found my own way on the research parts of the different religions and how the canon was produced and different wording of them. And I went really deep and really heavy into religion for years. And I guess there would have been somewhat of a bias based on the conclusions that I came to from that whole, 7-year span of my life and my very, early 20s and young adulthood, and bringing people into the world arose those questions. But I wasn't raised to believe anything. I had freedom to observe and I made my own decisions. But before this occurred, I just considered myself spiritual or agnostic.
Yeah, I very much was exactly the same way when I met you. Very much just a sort of a spiritual person. I think I experimented with like researching different things, but I was never committed to anything.
Right.
Yeah. So let's kind of go to that near-death experience day. What was going on?
I was at the motocross track riding my motorcycle, and I was in a bit of an imbalanced mindset, and I know that, they say don't ride when you're kind of off kilter, and I did. My babies are in the womb, and we rode motorcycles, and so I had a pretty lengthy history of dirt bikes and motorcycles, and it wasn't anything out of my character or out of my actions. It was just I know that it was an off day. I don't think I remember why I was feeling a little off. I don't remember that part. But I was hitting these jumps that I've hit many times before and cleared them. And this one, I overlanded a jump, and there was a rut, and the front of my motorcycle caught it, threw me off. I went over the handlebars, broke a bunch of bones. And it was interesting. I don't know how long any of it conspired, but this is how I remember it. And I have heard people tell me some things that have happened afterwards. So for me, I went from riding and cruising along to I was above everything and sort of floating in the air, but I as myself. To me it was very quick, and I knew that I had snapped out of it because I looked down, and this was maybe, 20, 30 feet or so up in the air, tucked back, and I'm looking at a scene to where I'm laid out on the track, and my husband at the time was panicking, and I was alone, sort of I'm still in the world, but I was up above, and I'm going, oh, I had that that instant question mark of like, oh, did I, oh, like, oh snap, no. And then so I looked around, and I remember taking this big breath. It's not in a breath like you think of normally. It's more of I mean, I know that I'm there. I'm conscious. I have sensations. I can, hear and see and feel, and I'm still me, but it wasn't like I was breathing a big breath. But that was sort of the moment when I said, "Oh." And then I looked around, and there was a woman to the right of me, and I just remember looking at her with the question. I'm just going, "Did I? That just no, 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 no." That's what I remember thinking. And then everything faded out that was around us. And she says, "No, no." And I was like, "Oh, all right." And we were not talking. We were not talking like with our words. It was more of all I had to do was look at this person who is very familiar. I still don't know who it is. It's a mystery. I knew that I knew her, and I knew that she comforted me, and that we had already met, and she was like, "Yeah, well, girl, a woman." So we had that kind of rapport with each other. And I looked at her and I said, is this a moment that we're having? And she's like, all you need to do is listen. Oh, okay. And I listened, not with my ears. I was listening to the scene that was below me, and the panic that was happening. And she says, you have to go back. And I was thinking, I didn't know there was another option. And then when we sort of started breathing together and observing this situation, and it wasn't like a physical closeness. It was like we got really close, and we started looking at this, dynamic that become bigger and bigger and bigger below us. And, I saw, in a way, it was like a mirage. It was so fleeting. Everything was so thin, or like I'm connected to it. I know I'm connected. My husband looked different, or seemed different, felt different. And I was like, oh, I know that's him, but I didn't like really recognize him. I saw him very differently than I had before. And then I saw my children. I have 3 kids. And then I noticed my children, and I don't think they had been told yet. And again, I don't know how long this happened, but I said, oh, I was like, oh, I know, I've got to be there. She's like, I don't remember how she said it, and she's not talking. She just said that, they need you. So whenever I looked back at her, there was another option that I had already experienced this before, and the other experience was 2012.
Okay, I was going to ask you that.
I kind of think I need to elaborate a little bit so that it makes a little bit more sense on there. But there was this, we already had an agreement that I'm going back. And the difference was that she understood that I knew I knew I was going to cry at some point, that I knew what the other option was. And everything is, it was so shallow. It feels like it was forever. It feels like I was probably, I don't know how long I was actually knocked out, but good Lord, hours of the contemplation for no reason. So she said,
Wow.
and then I got closer and closer to what I call the light. And then the more that I wanted to go back, the further away my children got. And I knew I had to stop. And so when we sort of retreated into this energetic bubble of, the further I got from them, the darker they got, and the lighter it became behind me. And in my previous experience, I think this is what I had mentioned to you before, Travis, too, was it's an interesting way to live whenever you have an exposure to something that is so unscathed and just pure. And I wanted to go to the light. And it sounds so corny because I've heard people talk about it before, and it's not like something that is describable by the light. It is a pull. It is something that is almost, why would you even want to resist it? Like what would you have any contemplation about? And so in 2012, and this is what was so alluring, and it was just inevitable. It's just this attractive, it's there is no other way but going there. And I already know that there's an opposition to what is the most pure.
That's really, you did have a near death experience. There's no doubt about it in my mind, because you talked about a lot of things that a lot of other people talk about in terms of similarities and things that they experience. One of the things, having sort of an indifference when you're on the other side to people, things, the life that you led, and then, going to the light and things like that. A lot of people say the same thing, like they see their body, but they're indifferent to it. They see family members, but they're indifferent to them. They have a connection. And it's interesting because So you said that the veil was thinner on this side compared to the light, that things felt less important to you.
I don't know how to really explain. And it was a conversation that was happening without words. And it was an understanding that then later on, after the fact, I can really process it. And so when the conversation went down I said, well, I was like, people have experiences in their life. Whenever you asked about my childhood, I just say, it was all right. You know what I mean? And so it's like, wouldn't my kids just say that too? Not selfish. There was no I'm being selfish moment. There was like, it's just the flow of life. If I, and I'm sort of getting further away, and when I didn't have this big, huge, expansive, whatever, I don't know, but it was very much the present life. And so when I was looking at it with her, through her, in accord with this entity, and we were, there was an emphasis on that these children need me. It doesn't have to do with him. It didn't have to do with friends. And when it was, it's the further away that we got, the more fragmented and
Mm.
distorted what is reality was becoming.
Wow.
And I was like, and what I knew is I felt these strings that were very connected to, I mean, not just my husband at the time, not just my kids and my mom and my dad, not, it wasn't just that. It was like there was these strings that were, you know, uh, not a literal string though, Travis. It wasn't like that. It was like an energetic wave thing that had me from multiple points. I was connected to reality, you know? And
Mhm.
so I was like, yes, but I want to go back into the light. And and I'll explain it what happened before in 2012. I want to go. Can I just like real quick, just a little
Right?
bit, and that wasn't an option. And so then I started
Mhm.
getting. It was very sad that I was like, oh wow. And I said, how do I go back? Not like literally, but I was like, I don't know how. When I've experienced what I have, and I know I'm choosing to be here, and I know that there's a purpose to it. Like I get it, you know what I mean? But how do I live in this? That was the struggle. I think that's what felt like took so long. Was it was already done. I didn't have a choice to go anywhere else. But the
Mhm.
un like these disturbed, you know, it's a it's a lack of rest that I was walking back into, or I just remember being like, well, it's exhausting. You don't understand. I'm talking to the lady. You don't understand. This is not
Mhm.
easy. And and this little negotiation happened where it was like this, just an irrevocable agreement. And I got sad. I was like, oh snap, I had to go back, and that, and it was a, she said, this is what you're not knowing, this is what you're not seeing, is that when you go back, the ooh, it was like, how do you make sense of the chaos and the fragments? That was my big thing. I was like, I don't feel safe. I'd already left one time before, and now I got another glimpse, and I was like, I don't know how to handle this. And she said, it, you know how, and it wasn't in words as she was explaining this. She's like, you know how whenever you look at somebody, right? It's like, okay. She's like,
Mhm.
and you understand that when someone's looking at you, and then I started, it's like you're talking me into it, and when you're looking at somebody, and the way that you see them affects who they are. This was the lesson for me. And that when someone else sees you, they do not, I mean, they don't have the ability to actually see and recognize and appreciate all of you. And
Mhm.
this was the moment when I said, well, and I got to look over, I don't even know, so many people in my world. And I saw connections that I had made,
Mhm.
and the different points in which we crossed each other's paths made ripple effects that were just massive. And she said
Wow.
that this is the point where, not some corny awakening thing either. It was more like, this is the point where you say, how do I want to see people? And for my own sanity, not so much digging into forgiveness, although forgiveness was a real true element, but that there was an important stress to me that in my mind territory, and I was able to feel the way that it connects to the heart, because a lot of the motion and the our like telepathic communication was, it felt like it was coming from the heart. There's no other way to
Mhm.
describe it because it wasn't here. And then and whenever I'm floating, I don't have like legs or feet or anything. I mean, there's still an awareness there, but so when she started bringing it into her description into me, so that I can run it through my mind, and I said, well, I'm not sure how to see these people. And she said that It's just so sad. She's just like, you have to love them. Even when they wrong you, there's a veil, there's a difference, there's a don't take it personally and do not hold it against them. Not for yourself, not for my mind went into justice and fairness and where's the equality and where's the synchronicity and there's too much
Mhm.
war and pain here. Like you don't understand. It's a painful place to be. And she says, she's like, back up, come back, come back. We started breathing again. It was really weird because then I started like feeling my legs and I was like, oh, and it was about I have to better define the veil that's between me and other people, because what was made so clear is how fragmented and distorted and various and morphed and affected from the internal circuit inside of the people's bubbles is
Mhm.
so different, and it's so connected in a chaotic way is how it came across to me. And so whenever I'm managing chaos is what it will sometimes feel like, but you will also have synchronicities and oneness, and and we've experienced that. She said the key that I apparently hadn't been to before, and it's been serving me all right since, is that how I see the person is going to make or break my experience in the world. And it's not for them, it's not for what some people would say, that give and take on forgiveness. It's because if I choose to see someone negatively or, expect yuckiness from them, I'm contributing to it.
Mhm.
And I'm fueling that they're gonna fill the space. And so the part was, well, people see me like that, I guess. People see me as whatever they see me as. And 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 she's like, that's the divide, is that it's not our duty being here and keeping ourselves clean and connected and grounded is not about us being accepted. And this was the hard part for me, but right before I came back into my body, this is what the solidification was um and I don't think that pure unconditional love does quite exist here in earth on this plane, but we do our best and we can elevate as a whole. In so like when you fuel the light and you're looking at the creatures on the earth, we can elevate it truly, and it comes from this perception micromanaging of, I'm the practice that's developed is, I'm not going to take that personally. I know I have good intentions. I'm not doing harm to anybody. I'm honest. And if someone else crosses the path, when you and we don't understand how, this is the other thing, we don't understand how much we're affecting the people around us. We really do not have any sort of a grasp on how huge it is. I mean, you think of, fascia in the body, super spider webby, super fluid, super water, and then you add electricity into it, and then you add
Mm.
action. I mean, it is a web. Humans make like this distorted, cloudy, light, fragmented web that has no pattern. There's no real pattern. And so whenever I'm coming back into that, and I'm knowing
Mhm.
that that is what it is, or for me anyways, I just think that you asked before, kind of like, did it change you? And it's I mean, how do I can't unknow that, everyone that I'm meeting, even if they choose to treat me really great or be, total punks, I I have this responsibility now to see. the good in them, and it has
Mhm.
nothing to do with me. It's for the, I mean, like that's the way that I was shown how to contribute. If I'm going to be here, I have to leave a positive ripple effect. And with that comes the understanding that the malleability of the psyche in the human brain, which is kind of similar to the web that creatures create here. And it wasn't just like there was dogs and cats connected in the whole creature web too. It wasn't just humans. We just had dominion, kind of a yucky one. But the connectivity, I mean, you just have to accept that with the light there is the dark. You're going to be judged, you're going to be condemned, you're going to be misunderstood, you're going to be hurt. You're not going to come out of this unscathed. You will have bruises and scars, and coming back and knowing that, it's like, oh, well, you know, so I mean, and that's what it got to the point of. It got to the point where I was like, oh, this is the web I'm walking into. Woo! Okay. And I don't know, like my feet just came back. And I remember waking up, blot out on the track. I didn't have my helmet on. I don't know where the hell my bike was. And the firefighter or ambulance guy was putting my thumb bones back in place. Pop, pop, pop. I was like, oh, ooh,
What a way to wake up, huh?
yeah. And then they said, they were like, uh, again, I don't really know. I don't really know what all was around me because it was just like, boom, I'm back. Jeez, that hurt. They asked if I could get up, and I said, I'm still on the track. I'm laid out on the track? Really? Like, still? I don't have time for this. There's not enough time to be doing this. One of the first things I said was, I don't have time for this. And they asked me to get up. And I was like, God, I'm telling my body to move. I'm like, yeah, sure. Just give me a second. And then I was like, my legs wouldn't do anything. I said, oh, this is a joke. I remember thinking, looking back up, like, no way. I didn't make that deal, And then it wasn't like that. And I don't know how long it took, but then I just remember being like, oh, okay. And I'm moving my hands and, moving my thumb. And I was like, no, I think I can sit up. And I go to sit up, and it was just boof. So much pain. I said, nope, where's the kids? Where's the kids? That's what I remember saying. Okay, I'm falling out on the track. I'm going to lay in here. I don't think I can move. I remember telling the guy, no, I can't get up. He said, okay. And they bring a stretcher. I know I ended up getting helicoptered out. And I was kind of going in and out of it when I first came back into my body because, and this is what I was told too after the fact, was I said, where's my kids? Many times over and over again. All I know is I wanted to know, were they watching me? I wanted them to stay back and away like I had seen it. I didn't want them up on the track watching me. And for some reason that was really important. And I couldn't get up. I was just like, this is so painful. And so they lifted me up on the stretcher thing and helicoptered out. And the kids they didn't see me on the ground, which I was super thankful for. They stayed back at the truck and the trailer, and then my husband was upright. And just a few bones later, that was. I didn't ride again for years. Obviously, you know that. I haven't gone back on the track because that's not the right way to die. It's just not. So I think that if you try to tell someone that, or I couldn't tell my ex-husband, he didn't have that. I mean, people kind of think that you're
crazy.
It's hard to explain it.
Yeah.
Even the words that I'm explaining it with don't give you the feeling of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A lot of people are just very much sort of in tune with the earthly existence and nothing else, and they're not open to any of that. But there are a lot that are, hence
Yeah.
our viewers. And yeah, it makes it's whenever I hear these stories, I feel like I'm hearing the truth, but I also feel like uh, you know, it just makes perfect sense that the world we reside in is just an illusion, and it's just a life experience, and that's why I think we're so indifferent to it when we go back to the other side,
Yeah.
because we instinctively know in our souls that home is back in the light and not really here.
The eternal. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
in contrast, so I think that part of my experience also, I might have mentioned this one to you when I was studying and doing healing, and I really dove into the different religions. And I mean, this was hours I didn't have to work. I was just a homeschooling wife. And so I had the freedom and the flexibility and the safety to really dive into, I think it's just, and I was born into some seeker path, they would call it. I can't not be like that. But I did some studying, what was it? Chiazon, Anne Marie Chiazon, and Andrew Weil, I think, was the most influential shamanic exposure to alchemizing. So I also think that my 2000, oh Lord, you know, 9 and all of those coinciding years had influence on the experience then, because they were so connected. And so when I was really devoting myself to these different healing modalities, because I can turn my hands on, you know this about me, and I've been able to do that since I was a child. I have healing hands that make little light bulbs.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was weird, but so I started studying to find out what is it, just because I'm curious. And I could touch my babies and put them to sleep, and I knew that other people weren't doing that. And I was like, oh, okay, so maybe this is my path, maybe this is why I'm here, maybe this is my purpose. And so I dug in like a deep curiosity. And so one of the previous experiences, it was not near death. It wasn't like, whoa. Well, on the other one, the motorcycle was like, oh, that happened. Did that happen? And then it's like a shock. It's like, oh snap, I'm not there anymore. And it's like instant, and then you lose time. And before, whenever I had left my body before, during all of these healing trainings, and I'm practicing on myself and whoever I can get my hands on, and so there was and I think that it's way more important in retrospect to acknowledge the process that got me there than it was to what do I do with it after the fact. And not even so much can I do it again, or what did it mean, because I have not been able to make sense of this, and I don't think I'm ever going to be able to. And it was more of what did I, what triggered the event. That's what I've come to be more focused on when I am having trouble fitting into the web and the net and the people, right? And so there's this mantra about compassion. It's healing presence, unconditional love, and it has it could just you can go really deep into it. And so I was doing a healing session on a friend who had injured his knee snowboarding, and I had the baby. I was like, I was young, newborn baby, so I wasn't riding or anything. And I had already trained myself well enough to be in theta state with another human being through my loved ones, I think, when my hands are on. And I love the timing.
I might get that.
Love the timing of that. It's making
That's crazy.
Tell. Should I tell or not? You see the timing?
Yeah, that was interesting.
You see this is the one that I doubt I'm talking about. Just give me a second.
Yeah, no problem.
Fire.
Do you think that the lady that you saw was potentially a guardian angel?
I like to think in my mind that, yeah, she's still there. We made an agreement, you know?
Yeah, they're
I
always
do.
there throughout your
I do.
entire life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I don't think I think a guardian angel is, I don't know, maybe it's the wording of a guide or something, you know? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, a guide, exactly. Your spirit guide.
Yeah. Yeah. I can connect with that more. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And then when you had that first near death experience back when you were with your husband back in 2012, and you said you kind of went up in the air and then you were out of your body. Did you jump out of your body before you even impacted anything?
Good question. No, no, because
Okay.
my conscious memory is the last thing I remember is I'm going over the handlebars, and then it skipped out and I'm floating above.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So,
Or it doesn't come across like I was like, ooh, dodge, ooh, jump, ooh, bail out. You know, I don't,
okay.
I don't. That's an interesting question.
Well, and the reason I asked that is because I have heard of people that have fallen to their deaths. They obviously survived, but they fell to their death, but they jumped out of their body before they impacted.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Because they didn't want to experience that, you know. So they leave before they actually
bailed
die.
out.
So,
Ooh, that's
yeah.
interesting.
Right. Okay. So the thing you talked about with the strings,
Yes.
there is a fabric of life in heaven. And I know I'm not pronouncing it right because it has a different label or term, but essentially there is this weave of life that we're all connected to. And that is what those strings are. And for every, you know, every single choice that you make, every single thought, it vibrates and it changes the weave of this fabric that we have of life. And
And it's
when
extensive. It's much larger than you
mhm.
even can even imagine.
Yeah, it's profound and it's beautiful, it's chaotic and it's all these things. And the only way that you can detach yourself from it, I think, is when you pass, when you return back home and then the strings are cut. The contract is broken, as you say. But
Yeah.
I have heard of that, and so that made me think of that. And also, you talked about this web, which is very interesting to me because um, what when you say web, was this like a visual web, or was it a? Did you feel like this web sensation, or was it just a way that you were explaining that experience?
I think, are you familiar with the fascia in the body, head to toe? It's sort of this fluid, electric. There's no distinct pattern. You can have, you know, there can be more thickness or density in one area, and it can be paper thin, almost non-existent in others, and then it can have, and there's movement that's going through it. It's okay. So when I think of like the aura and what I can feel when I'm in theta state with people, which I actually am not as willing to even do that anymore. It's so weird. It's so weird how it changes you. So the
Mm.
it's different. Your aura is a lot more magnetic, in my opinion. And
Yes.
there's a, you know, like I know when someone wants me closer or to back up because it feels like a magnet, right? The sensation of, you know, the life web, or, you know, and maybe
Mm.
it has to do with time, because here's the other weird part of it was I'm here, but part of me was also there when I was looking at it with this person. But I mean, my core is here, but I had spread myself thin through different channels, and the channels were very chaotic. I mean, I know it's not this beautiful web of life. And it wasn't so much, I think that the best way to describe it is visual, even though it's like you're asking, it's not this um sight. I mean, you can have one coming out of your, face, or your vocals, and then another is like the web is in you.
It's like a Torah field. It's
Yeah.
what I'm envisioning is the Torah field. So you have this center where it's basically a flat plane, and your Torah field comes up and it goes back down, and it does the exact same thing on the opposite end of the body, and it
Yeah, our
looks like a
our
web.
pivot point is our heart, or that's what I saw. I mean, there's all
Right.
different theories, but the core of it is here. The
Hmm.
recycling is here. So whenever you have something coming from another person's channel, it all ends up in the middle and in the heart. It all ends up right there.
So that makes me think that the sensation that our soul feels is that web sensation when we enter into this realm called the human existence. And I had recently heard of a near-death experience where somebody went to hell, and as they were descending down through hell, they were going through this very thick web. And they happened to be with Jesus at the time, and Jesus said that is the web of desire, because desire is the bottomless pit, right? And so when we enter into this world, we're entering into this world of sin, regardless of like we're basically enveloped in it, because the human code of the human body is 666. It's 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 something else. I don't know the science exactly, but like my mind just kind of goes all over the place. But it just, when you said web, it made me think of that experience that guy had, and maybe that's what the soul feels when it enters into this world. Maybe.
Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with desire. I
Are you
think after
okay?
the fact, because it's nearly impossible to be still here and be satisfied and content and safe and pure.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's I mean, I don't know what I would say, nearly, because anything can happen, but because of the push and the pull and the tug and the desires that are formulated through our experiences. And the other part of the web was that we are sticking to things that we don't
Mm.
need to be. They're done, but somehow the time webbed it through us, and it made a little energetic string, thick or thin, or easy to just sever or not. But we there's so many unnecessary connections still too, so that the cleanup of it was, because I had these thoughts after the fact. Well, how do I just clean up mine? And it's so, you can't stop wanting. So it's just so
It's
inevitable
part of
that,
the human experience.
yeah,
I think
it's
it's part.
part of
I
it.
think it's part of the design too. I mean, you know, we're here to experience life, but we're also here to experience chaos.
Yeah, our power, our ability to choose, our creation. Yeah.
You can't grow without those experiences. So I think it is by design that things are the way that they are. Obviously, and I wanted to talk with you about the ripples, because you got a chance to see, I'm assuming, what would happen if you did go to the other side and you left your children behind. Did you get to see
I
that?
I saw the darkness. I knew, I don't say saw, but I knew that the kid's dad could not do what their life path was. Like, it just wouldn't have happened. And their path, my kid's path, was already, it's funny because you look at it, but you're looking at it from before and then after also. So their path was already there, and I'm a part of it. And no, but the ripple of, if I would have not came back, it would have left unnecessary pain and darkness and confusing. And then and that wasn't supposed to run through my kids. That wasn't my kids' path. That's what I knew
Mhm.
about that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow, that's that's beautiful. I'm glad that you came back. and you gave your children a life worth living and experiencing, and I'm sure that one day they will thank you for
They are. They are. I have good kids, and one of them is a little confusing, but there's different elements to people. I mean, it really is, to what they're drawn to, and yeah. It's an interesting compatibility that we have with each other. It kind of doesn't make sense, but
well, I mean, they are a part of you,
Mhm.
and so they get a piece of you,
Yeah.
whether you believe that or not.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I don't. I mean, I wish I had more of a say. That's all.
In like what your kids do, or what do you mean?
It's kind of all the way that it processed later in combination with my other experiences. It was almost as if someone who's supposed to have an effect from another person, right? So, because I questioned this too, I said, well, if it's not me, wouldn't somebody else just end up filling the role, right? Or filling the void, or being this inevitable. The agreements are, well, I mean, it appears to be pretty solid. We have free will, but when the ripple effect happens, it almost seemed like there's little diamonds or sparkles and sprinkles that if there's a darker cloud, some sprinkle happens, right? To offset it. And if it's not one person, then isn't it the other person? So wouldn't there just inevitably be someone else that fills that void in that spot in that position and is naturally inclined and drawn to approach someone and give them a smile, or I don't know. So to me it was like, do I have to be there for it to happen?
Mhm.
because I've already experienced something else. And so I think that's the confusing part, is like, what is the desire wave, is what I'm wanting already done, kind of, because, or why would I be wanting it? You know what I mean? Or if I don't do it, someone else is just going to do it. So I don't know. I
Sure.
struggle with the purpose of it all. What's the purpose? To have
Like,
fun.
what's the point of you being there? Well, I would say that, and in my experience, that we all essentially sign a contract before we come into this life to experience a very specific set of things, and we're here to do something, God's work, essentially.
I agree.
And if you don't fulfill it, you got to come back and do it again. So you might as well get it done the first try.
I agree. Yeah.
So that's why we're still here. Another thing, really quickly, forgiveness and how important that is. A lot of near-death experiences that I've heard of, when they are in the moment of going and transitioning and returning back to heaven, some of them with their guardian angels will say, listen, you've got to take a moment and you've got to forgive everyone that ever hurt you, because you cannot go into this realm with God if you have any sort of malice or hatred or anything holding on to you that you're holding on for someone else.
Yeah.
And so did you experience anything like that? Because I'm not sure that you completely went to heaven. I still feel like you were basically here the whole time.
Yeah, the previous experience with the healing is where I was able to enter the light against my will. I did not know what was going on. I did not understand it. But I experienced, and I'm not going to call it heaven because that's an overly used word. And what I know is how I got to that point, and I had no experience. I had zero preconceived notions of leaving the body. I did know. I was going to bed at night and I was practicing, I mean, consistently, like nonstop, daily practicing these mantras and trying to see what the depth that I could go into myself was. That was my intention when I was on that healing venture, and putting myself through these studies and these rituals, and to lay down at night and be coaxed into a very extreme, what started off as a vivid movie, and be pulled, literally pulled outside of me. It is the scariest thing. I mean, it kind of gives me chills talking about it, to be laying in my bed and feeling like I think I'm losing my mind, because, and I didn't have a huge desire to look up an internet. Part of the practice was you just be with your experiences, and so I wasn't researching anything. I was following the mantras and the rituals and taking it very seriously. And this was back in ancient alchemization. This was ancient DNA hacking, rhythmic breathing and moving and motions, and being intentional and being pure with my food and getting, rest. And so I was very committed to the process. But I'm telling you, Travis, laying down at night in the bed and being pulled out of my body with what felt like was against my will is so, the fear was so unimaginable that I would rather die. No. But like, being in this, and what.
So are we talking about an out-of-body experience?
This was before I had the motorcycle accident. This is how I knew what the light was. Yeah, there's two very prominent, blueprint paths on my life I have just accepted. This was way back years ago, before, 7 years before the motorcycle accident. And this was a game changer in my whole entire, and I cannot call it a near-death experience because I wasn't dying. It was being, there was hands that encompassed my entire energetic bubble body being that coaxed me. I can't say pulled because that's traumatic. That coaxed me into, I have no idea what it was. And I had something that was very thick, very heavy, very solid from my belly and my core. And this was my first outer body experience. And I was able to see that it was so dark. I did not want anything to do with it, because it was cold and it was heavy and it was thick, like hard to move through. And it was just uncomfortable. I'd rather break bones or have labor. I don't know how to explain it. Emotionally, maybe uncomfortable. Emotionally, maybe, I don't know. But then when and this was over the course of probably 5-6 days. This was happening every night when I went to bed. It was so insane. And then I was
these mantras that you were doing, what were these mantras? Were these things you were doing to induce an out-of-body experience?
No, I had zero intention. I had zero awareness. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't understand. And it wasn't supposed to be one of the results. One of the results was supposed to be, alchemic, ancestral DNA hacking, healing, changing the path of generations for years, can I be strong enough and present enough and content enough and aware enough and be loving and caring enough to be and accept that I'm a seeker and I was born that way, and not try to push it away for shallowness, and just say, okay, if I explore this, then I will use it. That my intention was to say, I can't avoid and ignore and disown the fact that I look through the world with a lens that is very deep, and I cannot help but to ask questions. And I was done struggling with, well, I want to be shallow and simple and just be like other people, And so whenever I got over that, I said, no, I'm just going to dive into this. And again, I was safe and secure and provided for, and I just had my babies, and it was the perfect environment that was, it was supposed to be. It was part of my path. I do not question that anymore at all. But when the process. And when it completed like that. And it was leaving me going, what just happened? And I have found 2 other people since then through forums who had extremely similar experiences. It was uncanny, the details on this. And
Can
it
I
makes
ask you
me feel better.
something?
Yeah, please do.
So you said these hands essentially coaxed you out of your body, and you said it felt very cold. So were you in a cold room, or you were just experiencing cold?
I was in my bed next to my husband, and my baby was on the sleeper to the opposite side. It was home. I was
And
at home.
and were these hands attached to bodies?
No, but it wasn't a hand like it. And I think, again, it has something to do with your psyche and your imagination, how you think. When I think of my hands, when the lights turn on and there's a more of a consistent area, and then it kind of fades out and it gets into this beautiful, but there's a bit of a distinct shape. And so I think it also had to do with my psyche at the time when I was developing this, and like my crown opens and my hands turn on. And so to me, it was like these hands. It may not be that to if someone else would have experienced the same thing. You know what I mean? But to me, it was massive. Like one hand can go the top of my crown and encompass the entire aura. And it just came and pressed me. And I saw how tight it could get. It was like, what are you doing? Give me some space. Like I felt like roar, automatically like, get away, you're squishing me. It's like, so to me it was like hands that just
Okay.
And then eventually there was no choice, because I thought I was losing my mind. You have to surrender. You have to let it happen. There is no. And then the first night, I woke up. I don't think I slept. I woke up and it was this all I could think about. And then I said, oh, okay, well, that was an interesting day. I wonder what's going to happen. I go back to bed that night. The same thing keeps happening until you surrender to it. That's all there is to it. And so then when the surrendering happenings and whatever the heck it is, it's like this, everything softens and it just like, oh. And then all of a sudden your breath goes and pushes it away. And then you breathe again and it just pushed it back away. And I kept breathing and being like, oh, okay, I got this. This is what it's about. And then I come out of my body. And I said, whoa. And I looked back at my body and I was like, oh, snap. And it was so dark and so like, I remember going, oh my God, what is this? I just remember being like, what the hell? And then
So you couldn't see anything?
No. And it was but I knew something was there. And so it was this, and it was thick. It was like, what the fuck is going on here? And when I looked back at my body, I was like, okay, you're fine. You're fine. I was able to calm myself down and say, and I'm connected. And I was like, okay, all right, we're doing this. And then something started opening up and like appearing, and there was two different distinct, from black to gray to not necessarily anything clean or super visual, but it just like these 2 spots softened, and I was supposed to choose which one. I was like, yeah, I don't know. And so I said, what do I do? What do I do? And they said, this person, it wasn't, is going to stay here and protect you. You're protected, you're safe, you're connected. Okay. And then it said, and again, these are not words, but I was like, so I knew that whatever was here that kept me to my body, that could get extremely long, and it has, the tethering point was very freedom allowing. I can say it like that. And so I said, well, what do I do? What do I do? Okay. And I was, they say, come here. Okay. And they said, and it was like, remember the mantra. It's like, okay. All right. So compassion, healing presence, innate harmony, and unconditional love. And I was just repeating that. And I was like, okay. And everything lightened up around me. And it was super, like, I'm telling you, Travis, there's
I
no
believe.
way to explain this. It was very in an instant, like poof, like the yucky, dark, black, quiet, invisible nothingness went from that to now I am in a hall of light that I was afraid to walk into because I thought it was going to blind me.
Mhm.
And there's this whatever the Khmer thing kind of developed into no faces or anything, but just like a light orb. It was like a light orb, an oval orb is the best way I can describe that. And it was communicating with me, obviously saying, right over here. And so I'm in this hallway and I was like, I don't have feet. I think that's normal. And I looked back and I saw my body was there. It was being protected. It was safe, quiet. It was sleeping. I was like, okay, this is all right. I can do that. Remember the mantra. And I was like, okay. And so I just said, and I'm conscious and I'm thinking and I'm aware and I can have sensations. I'm feeling what's going on around me. I felt it whenever I got closer and closer in this hallway of the light, that it was like I was translucent and it went through me. And it was scary at a bit. And then the, orb was like so calming, so reassuring, no question about it. I was like, this is where I'm going. I said, yeah. I said, all right. And then we floated, glided towards this. To me, it was a hallway and a corner. And when I came around this corner, it was the exact opposite of the dark and thick, tarry sludge stuff. As soon as I come around it, I thought I was gonna dissolve into whatever, the light. I don't even know how to describe everything went away. I was like, I know that I'm me right now. I know that this person that had appeared was also the gentleman that just so happened to have the knee injury while he's snowboarding, and I went into theta state, the deepest that I've gone with anybody, and he popped up, and I was like, oh, hey. And he says, I know you. I said, I know you. And we're not talking, but we were just like, and our hearts just came together, and we sort of glanced over this, and there was other people. I knew there were people, but they weren't bodies that were there, and they were all so peaceful and loving, and it was so clean. It's like, this is how it's supposed to be. This is the potential of it. This is what, when you let go of the shit, this is how coinciding and harmony is. And it was so much love that I just remember breaking down, like, I don't even think I'm supposed to be here. It was that intense. It was like, everything was right, but I kept saying something's wrong with me. And then if you weren't supposed to be here, then you wouldn't be. It was like, okay. And I'm just trying to, we communicate, not about anything specific, but it was just like, I see you. It was like, I see you and I know you and I know what you want and I know where you come from and I know where you're going. And it was this just so deep that it was past and obliterated the point of being uncomfortable. It became this indescribable quiet and peace and acceptance that almost made me like want to hate myself. It was like, what are you accepting me for? You know what I mean? It was like, it was so intense. The words do not even describe what it feels like to be in this. Everything was so right. And I was perfect. And I had never been perfect before, but I had never been seen by any other being as just right. Like, this is how it's supposed to be. And what ended up happening when I obliterated, I was like, oh, and it's so intense because I have sensations, I have feelings, but it wasn't scary anymore. It was like, I can be a part of this. Okay. And what happened was I ended up, I don't know what the gentleman has to do with it. He did speak and reach out to me about experience that he was having. I drew pictures of what happened, and he didn't have the same experience as me, but he did have an extremely profound experience in his own ways. And I wouldn't share his story, but for me, what it looked like was we started in an upside down tornado vortex that got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And we just said like this, and my hair is blowing and the wind, and we're sitting sort of like crossed like this with our feet up in that, meditation type of stance. And I was able to just, the light came in through the spine and just said, like, this insanely huge expansion as we're just rising into, don't even know where I was going. And then it just came down and through and to me, and every cell in my being soaked it up, and it was so incredibly beautiful.
Wow.
And I want to go back so bad. It's so hard to experience that. And then the vortex, the tornado just faded. I just faded. I don't know. I don't know. And then that was it, Travis. That was it. Like, I've tried to go back. I've tried to do it over again. I've tried to say, what was that? And I don't know.
Wow.
It's really hard
That
to
is
hear. And then I had that motorcycle accident where I was like, I remember what that was. It's hard to be here knowing that. You know what I mean? And anyways, it was so, I think I'm lucky to have experienced it, and especially in the way that I did.
You're very lucky. You're extremely lucky. I mean, I've been through a lot in my life, but I've never experienced anything like that. Like, I'm a spiritual, loving human being, and I've never had a spiritual experience. Not really. I've seen ghosts.
That's a good
lots of those.
Do you? But Travis, the amount of, I know love is such an overrated word, but the amount of acceptance that you have in your life, like your core and your ball and your being, and what the I am is, if you understood how loved and accepted and good you are, it's like, it's so beautiful. I can't, there is no words, Travis, to put it into. There is no words. And if you knew it, then I just don't think that it's really possible for us to grasp it, because we have so many it's so pinched off. The light is so fragmented that, I mean, I wish I could just, for even just 1 second, I wish I could just touch you and say, that's how connected and beautiful and wonderful and accepted and loved and valuable and needed you are. And it's gonna scare the shit out of you. It's like, it's not I don't know.
It sounds amazing. I'm envious of your experiences, honestly. I truly am.
I'm trying to appreciate.
These are profound.
I try to. Although I think that it just made it harder to be here, honestly. And I feel like an outcaster, like an outsider. But I have found a few years went by, and I said, I had left my husband, and I was like, this, I mean, that wasn't what life was about. And I just said, I feel so alone. And I was able to find some people, and one of the women, actually, there's one up here on the hill in Idlewild too. And I was
Oh,
just mind blown
great.
at it. It's amazing. And I'm just
Okay.
thinking that, though, it's so hard to understand how we're supposed to feel in life. Life is supposed to be, pleasurable, and there's supposed to be fun in the fact that we have desire. This is what you pinpointed on earlier, and I know this is what I haven't been able to wrap my head around fully, but it's not, the spirit isn't designed, I believe, first off, to be contained. So when we come here, there's so many restrictions, and I think that the restrictions are what cause the pain. But if and maybe if more people felt it, and if more people would have that cleanse, and I don't know, I'm not sure why that happened.
Well, I would say that what is I know that your profession now is in real estate, and you're doing very well with that. I'm proud of you. You've
Thank you.
done very well with that.
It's very
But
difficult.
prior to that, you had, I don't know what your label or title was, so could you disclose that to us?
I think that the motorcycle accident is what shifted gears. Shifted gears. No, it's what changed the career path for me, was when I was able to see the web, and I understood that I can't. I think I had been under the guise that I really had the ability to help heal, and my previous, and I still have this business. I'm just extremely selectful. I'm not open to working with very many people anymore, but it started in childhood, and so in that process of trying to figure out what it is that I was doing with my hands, I did 4 different variations of Reiki, because I kept getting a taste of it through that, and that wasn't quite what it was. And I did craniosacral therapy to understand, essentially, when the light is going into someone's body from my hands, what was it that I was seeing or feeling, knowing that it was going to and through. And I've taken, multiple anatomy classes, and I mean, I can identify the organs and things like the different functioning units and systems of the body. And then I went into different healing modalities. I got really hooked on Jin Shin Do, which is like your jumper cable ability of, I can shoot the energies from here to there. And I'm really, really good at it in the healing, but it doesn't pay the bills. And when I get digging into it deeper, and I have been able to sort of compare the human psyche to the life web, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I lost hope. That's all. I don't know.
Well, I would say that life has a lot of distractions for sure.
Yeah.
Especially the distraction of being successful, the distraction of children, even though they're not a distraction, but just all of the things that we encompass in our lives that keep us busy and removed from the experience with God, as you say.
Yeah.
Or I don't know what you call God, but yeah.
I call it source now. I call it source, because that's what feels the best. That's what I can connect with. Yeah.
He has many names,
Yeah, there is.
Thing,
and it's all the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, wow. Holy shit. I didn't know all this stuff about you.
Well,
how long have we known each other?
it's not something that I only became willing to talk because I know I have found two other people who had that upside down vortex. You're leaving your body, and this is what you're going to experience. And I think, well, then I thought, well, it's not just me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so it's a little more safe to talk about it. And that was in
absolutely.
2012 is when that solidified. Mhm.
I've never heard of that tornado before. This is the first time I've ever heard of that. And I would love to hear what our viewers have to say about that. If anybody else out there
Please.
has had that sort of experience, I would love to hear about it.
And to be dissolved into light, I want to talk to anybody who's experienced even something remotely close to that.
So when you say you were dissolved into the light, were you just afraid that like your entire being, your consciousness would be gone?
Well, yeah. No, I know. In the beginning, yes, Travis, in the beginning. And towards the end, with the in the end, it didn't matter. In the end, it was like, it's so pointless to have me. Like, what? Like, I don't even need it. Like, I can be, well, I don't know if you would call that ego death. I've read about ego death, and it just doesn't seem like it's the same level. It's more of, am I afraid to lose myself? But in the beginning, and when it permeated every cell, I don't even know if they were cells, if it was maybe just like maybe I was okay with being an orb. Or like, I don't know. It didn't matter anymore, Travis. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter. It was like, there wasn't a part of me left to care if I was dissolved, which is not something that you can't, it's not speakable. It was agreeable, and it was a choice, and I could have resisted it, and it would have been uncomfortable. And I could have said all of the whatevers that I was holding on to was immediately balanced by the other whatevers in the light world were in agreement with it, and we knew each other. Like, there was no question that it was safe. It was scary and it was fearful, but it wasn't this, I don't know how to explain it. It was just inevitable. It was like, nothing else mattered. Do you know what I mean?
That's beautiful. I do, because I actually just heard a very similar story to yours where this person had a near-death experience and she was about to be enveloped or swallowed up by the light, and she was terrified because she thought she would turn into nothingness. But what actually happened was she still had her personality, she was still herself, but she was the light, and it was just the most beautiful experience for her, So I have heard this before, and you're not alone. You experienced the ego death. You were on point with exactly what that was. Guaranteed.
I don't know if I would describe the way that it was experienced as ego death. I mean, it kind of, from the other things that I've read about it, but it was more, it was less about personality than what I've sort of read ego death to be. Because like you said, and like the other person said, I was still me. So I wasn't killing me in a way. I wasn't like.
It's a fear.
It is. I would, like I said, I would rather bake bones and give birth and die. I have a whole nother fear
But
tolerance.
you did it. you
Yeah,
did it anyway. I mean,
yeah.
because at that point it's like, well, what else am I gonna do? So,
There was, yeah.
you
They're just. Eventually, there wasn't a choice. Eventually, it was like, well, this is what happens. So
mm,
if I don't surrender into it, it's going to be really uncomfortable. That's really what
yeah,
it was. So
yeah,
I'm so glad other people have experienced it, because sometimes it kind of seems not like a benefit or a blessing,
yeah.
because it's hard to
I want
connect with people after that.
absolutely, absolutely. And I wanted to add, people like you who are connected with the source in such a way, or the light in such a way, throughout their lives, because you've had the healing of hands for as long as you
Mhm.
can remember, right?
Yeah. I
And you
remember
have
watching my dad scalp him laid out on the floor as a little kid, getting rid of his headache. You know? Yeah.
right, and that's a profound ability. And then you've had intuition, yeah. Like everybody has intuition, but yours has been pretty
This
accurate.
this is what I had to accept about myself when I started saying, well, I'm going to explore this, while I had the safety and security to explore it, because I was able to start connecting the dots that other people thought differently than me, and they saw the world differently than me. I mean, I wasn't grown up. You don't get raised being taught how different people's minds and psyches are. And I said, well, I guess I'm just sensitive. I went from I'm sensitive to I'm an empath to I'm connected to, I'm
Thank you.
intuitive.
Exactly the word that was coming out of my mouth
Yeah.
was you are connected. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And there's this emphasis that psychic people who have abilities are evil, which is not true. What it means, if you look at the science, or you look at the facts that have been laid out by people that have had near death experiences, and they've experienced what it's like to be in spirit. And one of the things that they experience is a expansion of all of your senses, where you can see 360 degrees. You see all around you. You can smell everything. You can taste everything. All of your senses are expanded, right? And you can telepathically communicate with each other, right? These are psychic abilities that all spirits have. But when
Mhm.
you're born into the body, you can lose them. And a lot of us are
Mhm.
born with it as children, but we forget because we're programmed by our parents to believe that it's not true, or that it's evil. But it's not. We're just connected with source. So just know that you are so connected to source. And this is probably why you've had those experiences. It's probably,
Possibly. It's
you know,
possible.
especially when you're doing a mantra about unconditional love. Of course you
Try to
experience.
explore that. Try to explore that one.
I think I will. You're going to have to send
Study.
that mantra to me.
I mean, you're going to come across a lot of stumble blocks.
What an amazing story. I'm I'm shocked, but I'm not, because I do know you. I've known you for a long time. And these experiences are actually very beautiful and moving and life-changing. I'm curious, like, after all this, what is your position with source or God now?
I think the position is, you know,
Don't forget that you are loved. Remember, you
no, I
just
know,
don't,
I know, but
that
I'm
despite
that
everything, no matter what, you are still loved unconditionally, right? Yeah.
I know, but I also know that the shadows that we leave behind are serious. And I think that my new sort of agreement is, I, and I don't want to sound selfish, but I mean, it kind of is. I'm not here anymore since the motorcycle thing I mean, I am here to help other people, but I'm not here to heal and show people anything. And if Source says that there's a purpose, then there must be. So the agreement is, will you please, I'm asking, keep me motivated and enthusiastic and appreciative that I'm here and I get to create and I get to experience the body, and and I will do no harm, and you know I'll do my best. Like, I have integrity way more so than I ever even understood the need for it before. So, I mean, the agreement is, I don't know what we like to think we can create our reality, very much so. It's very satisfying, empowering, and all that good stuff. And but the honesty in it is like, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I know that it's supposed to. And I am way more deliberate about the actions that I'm taking that people see now than I have ever been before. And the agreement with God is, I don't doubt them. I mean, this is just supposed to happen. If I'm doing it, then it's supposed to happen. So, I mean, I don't know if there's a solidified agreement. It's just that I'm just detached. And I don't know if Source wants that, but you know, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because there are a lot of people that, go into the light, experience all that love, and come back and they're depressed. They don't know why they're here. They
Yeah.
go through a lot of years of depression, because when you feel something like that, and
I'm
then you got to
coming
come back
out
to
of
this
that.
place.
I'm coming out of that lately. No, it did
Yeah.
shake me and tore pieces of me out and put new pieces. And I have gone through phases where I don't even recognize myself. And do I have the ability and freedom, and can I change? And I am changing. And I just thought, well, I cannot convince myself that there is a point and a purpose, but I know that if I'm here, I need to be. And it may not be for me. It's probably for the ripple effect that it's going to have. And so when it comes to being depressed, the depressing part, and I've had the same therapist for 8 years. Thank you.
Wow.
Blessing. And so the depressing part is that I have to accept how misunderstood I am and I'm going to be, because of people's lens, people's perception, because of what they're doing with their psyche. And the depressing part is that I know that I can love deeply, and to see someone suffer and not be able to stop it and fix it, and to, like, their suffering is only going to change. That is so sad when something in them changes, and to have to live in a world like that, that is just not fair, because people are walking around in pain and in suffering, and it doesn't matter how good of a person you are. It doesn't matter how good of an influence you are. Not really. I mean, the web is connected, but it's all from their little seed. I see them as seeds. Their inner seed is what does it. That is so depressing. It's so hard to just, I mean, like, even just getting multiple different relationships, or just sort of, they're now at a, I don't want to hurt them. You know what I mean? On an accident. Like, I'm not even anything on purpose. It's just like, and then to see someone, especially through addiction, it's just like torturous to watch it.
Yeah, I've been dealing with a couple of people that have that sort of addiction issue, and watching them destroy themselves is very difficult.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this will help, but whenever I see things like that, I of course am a very compassionate person, and I don't like to see people suffer. I don't even like to watch animals, or even I don't even like insects suffering. Like I'll rescue an insect from the pool. Like that's just who I am.
Yeah.
I don't like that stuff. But sometimes you have to kind of go into sort of a third person perspective, and I like to just kind of look back and think, okay, well, maybe their soul's purpose is to suffer
It's
so that
desire.
they can
It's
learn
not
this lesson.
suffering. The purpose isn't suffering, it's desire. And because you have desire, you will suffer. Or,
Well, yes, the
sorry,
human
that's what
experience is desire, of course, but what I
yeah.
mean by that is, like I said, we're all here to learn. It is all spiritual growth, right? And so we set in stone prior to our birth things that are going to happen that are going to create suffering for us, because pain is healing. Pain and suffering, they call it in heaven, they call it joyful pain. So when you're in pain and you're suffering, just know that when you come out of it and you've healed, now you're in a position where you can help others who suffer. And that's why we're here. We're here in service to our brothers and sisters. We're in service to God, to source, whatever you want. It's all about being a service. That's why we're here.
Yeah. It's that intertwined.
Yeah. Well, this has been a amazing experience, and I feel blessed that I had the chance to connect with you in this way, and hopefully we helped you in some way, kind of maybe spark some new ideas about what that whole experience was. But I really do appreciate you.
Yeah, it's interesting to see it. I'm glad you asked, because I don't think I would have shared this if it wouldn't have been you asking.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's good to see you again.
Yeah. Well, and if anybody wants to reach out that watches it, I'll talk.
Yeah, I can leave your information, info.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Bye, Travis.
Bye.
Mm-hmm.